Welcome to the Women Lighthouse podcast, your friendly guide through all the ups and downs of life. We're here to remind you that every woman has the strength to take charge of her journey and make her dreams come true. Each week, we'll share heartwarming stories and helpful tips from amazing women who have faced their own challenges and come out stronger. Tune in, get inspired, and let's start this exciting journey towards achieving your dreams together. The Women Lighthouse, your guide to a brighter tomorrow. Welcome to another episode of the Women Lighthouse podcast. It's great to have you on the show today. How you doing? Today, we're going to be discussing a very interesting topic, and that is exploring homeschooling. As we dive into this topic, I want to a disclaimer. Basically, I'm sharing based on my personal experience as a homeschooling mother and not as a professional in the academic or the educational field. I've been homeschooling for over a year. And why is it even important to talk about homeschooling on a podcast that has to do with empowering and inspiring women? Basically, women is being observed and is being known based on research by UNESCO that women are often responsible for educating their children. So most often than not, you will see that when it comes to the education of a child, a woman is at the forefront of making decisions that have to do with the education of her children. And when you look at the education of a child, when it comes to school runs or attending events in school or preparing the children from school, naturally, you would find a woman in that mix. Also, the essence of this episode so that you as a woman can make an informed decision about determining what's the best form of education for your child. We are in an evolving world, and people are gradually becoming open to alternative methods of educating their children, especially with the insecurities all around, the economic recession where there's a lot of inflation going on, and basically so many reasons people are beginning to open up to other methods of education, and homeschooling is one of them. So in today's episode, we'll be exploring the myths, the facts, and the realities surrounding homeschooling. And we'll talk about understanding how homeschooling works to debunking common misconceptions about homeschooling. And through this episode, you will be educated and informed on how you can make alternative decisions with regards to the education of your child. Stay tuned. You're welcome back. I'll begin by giving a brief overview about what homeschooling is about. Homeschooling is an educational approach where the parents are the primary ones responsible for making the decisions with regards to their child's education. When it comes to traditional schooling, you enroll your child into a school. That school is responsible for determining curriculum, the scope, the style of teaching, and so many things with regards to the education of the child. But in homeschooling, it's the reverse. The parent is responsible for determining how they want their child to be educated. And there are different styles of homeschooling. I won't be going into the nitty-gritty of what each of these styles look like, but I'll just mention them. basically you have the school at home, or they call it the traditional style of homeschooling. So what's done in the school setting is what you also replicate. The only difference is it's done at home and not in a school environment. There's also a classical style where it's more literature based. There's unschooling, that's the child-led approach. The child is the one that determines at that particular point in time what they want to learn. So based on the interest of your child, the parents observes the interest of the child and exposes the child to that interest, and with that the child learns. So there's no structured curriculum with unschooling. Then there's Montessori. Montessori is relatively common. That's more of hands-on learning, where you provide an enabling environment for the child to learn hands-on. And there's Charlotte Mason. That involves a lot of living books, nature studies, and an eclectic approach, which is a combination of each of these homeschooling styles. So for me, I'm an eclectic homeschooler. So I'll be giving you an overview of my homeschooling journey. I began homeschooling March 2023, and I'd actually known about homeschooling in 2018 while I was listening to a podcast. I just did a little research and it looked interesting. I was like, wow, this is something I would love to do. But I didn't see the possibility of being a homeschooling mother, because from what I observed, it's basically women who are either stay-at-home moms or have a form of very flexible schedule that took up that task of homeschooling their kids. And for me, I was working and I am still working, so I didn't even see the possibility. So it was just something I desired, I would love to do, but I didn't think about it until 2023 March, when certain occurrences happened and the idea of homeschooling came up again. So the first reason why I decided to homeschool my child was, at a point, I wasn't in the same location with my husband. So where I was previously, my child was actually attending a private school. So by the time I came back to the same location with my husband, it was quite challenging finding a school that was had the same standard and also the same budget that I had from the previous experience in the school that my son was. So that was the first challenge. Finally, I got to school for my son, but the standard wasn't just it. I decided to give it a try. It was within my budget, but during the course of his experience in the school and a lot of things I noticed, it just wasn't the standard I wanted for him. What was the standard I wanted? Basically, the class size was one. It had a very large class size. I needed a school that had a moderate or a smaller class size, but I couldn't get that for the budget I was looking at. Then also, style of teaching was the same way I was taught while I was a child in nursery school and in primary school. I wanted better. We had actually been exposed to Montessori kind of learning, but what we were getting was more of a traditional style of learning. So I really wanted better. Then also, outside that, school interruptions. I think at that period, we were having elections in my country, Nigeria. So because of the whole uncertainties, generally, schools didn't want the children to come. While the children were at home, the provision for online learning was just not it. It wasn't something that they could follow through with. So I now saw myself actually beginning to fill in a lot of gaps that I observed during that period when the school interruption occurred. So fortunately, my son took ill that period. He couldn't go back to school immediately because he was in recovery, and it took a while. So that period, I was also filling in and teaching him. And I actually saw it was something he was enjoying, something I was enjoying. It wasn't as hectic as I thought it would be because I didn't have prior experience with regards to education. So, but I was able to learn a lot about his style of learning during that period, and I was able to cover even the assignments that he was given to do. So there was a more independent form of learning, and it was at his pace, and we're picking up. He was doing fine. I was enjoying the experience. So that was also another reason why I decided to homeschool. Then also, I experienced a lot of burnout that period, having to wake up very early, prepare the kids and prepare my son for school, rush, take him, drop him off. As at then, my daughter was still very small. She was an infant, under 1 year old, so she hadn't started daycare. So having to juggle the school run, rushing, meeting up with work, I experienced a lot of burnout that period, and it was really telling on me. And another thing I noticed about my son, by the time he comes back from school, he's so exhausted. Even before we get home in the car, he's falling asleep, and by the time we get home, he sleeps. So before he could wake up to do his homework, which, by the way, used to be so much for his age. The homework they were giving him was just a whole lot. So by the time we could meet up, by the time he could wake up to do the homework, getting in the mood to do the homework was another issue. It was something we were struggling with. It was telling on me I was experiencing burnout. He was experiencing burnout at that young age. I don't even think it wasn't up to 3 years as at then, or maybe he was 3 years. He was 3 as at then. It was just a whole lot to deal with that season. By the time I put all these factors together and I was thinking of a way forward, the Holy Spirit just reminded me and said, you can actually homeschool your child. And the next question was, how? I'm a working mom. I work. How am I going to homeschool? My husband is working. I'm working. Who is going to take care of my children? If I'm homeschooling, it means I'm not taking them to school. So I had a lot of questions, and being that I'd never homeschooled before, I began this research on what I could do, especially as a working mother. So these are the reasons why I decided to homeschool. People have different reasons why they want to homeschool. Some would say they want to be able to have a more bonding experience with their child. They notice if their child goes to traditional school, they don't have that time to bond with their child. Those are for people that have a lot of flexible schedules. Then some people would say that because they notice certain attributes that the child picks up while at school and they're not comfortable with it, so they want to have the child learn under a more safe and controlled environment where you are certain of what your child is being impacted with. So people have different reasons why they want to homeschool. So it's important that if you are considering homeschooling, you know your why. Why do you want to homeschool? That is one question you have to ask yourself. And that was a question I had to ask. And by the time I put in all these factors together, I decided to give it a try. And what are the things I love about homeschooling? The first thing I took note of is the fact that we don't have a rigid schedule. Because I'm a working mother, what we have is a routine. These are things we should be able to do on a daily basis. With regards to the academic work, we have like goals. Okay, this week I set certain academic goals. These are the goals we should be able to achieve during the course of the week. Another thing about homeschooling is it doesn't have to be Monday to Friday. It doesn't have to be 5 times a week. It can be 4 times a week. You can do what works for you. The beauty about homeschooling is the school calendar doesn't have to be structured from January to March, then we take a break in April, something like that. You could homeschool all year round if you choose to. You could choose to follow the academic calendar that's of a regular traditional school, or you could choose to have your own school calendar. What matters is you have your goals on what you want to achieve in that academic year, and you set a plan on how to achieve the goals in a way that it works for you. So the flexibility for me is the first thing I love about homeschooling. It's flexible for both my child and I. It's flexible when I don't have to rush and say, my child has to get to school before 7:30. So then we wake up so early and he has to eat, he has to do this, he has to do that. 7:00 he's set, he's ready to go to school. For a child who is just 3 years, getting to school on or before 7:30 is just too early. But we know when you're a working mom and you have to resume work by 8, all those things. So you have to look for a way around it. But for me, it works for me as I'm on my way to work. For what works for me as a working mom is I have provision for childcare. So my children are not necessarily always at home, but there are times that they could be at home. So that's another beauty, the flexibility. We don't have to be in school Monday to Friday. Some days, if I know I have to be out, as I'm going out, if my husband is not available to also take care of the kids, there's a place I drop them off. But if my husband is available to look after the kids and to oversee them, or someone else is available, I have support. So the kids don't necessarily have to wake up so early and start going out. So the flexibility for us, then it allows us to live a slow-paced life. That hustle and bustle of having to, I remember even while I was my son was in regular school and I had to work. I'm rushing to leave the office just to go do school runs to pick the kids, and I'll be looking at my time. Oh my God, I don't want my child to be the only one left. And the issue of some schools provide after school care. The thought of a child waking up so early to prepare for school, gets to school by 7, then maybe because you're a working mother, you can't get in time to pick your child. You enroll your child for after school care. That child is there till about 4 p.m. It's just a whole lot. When does the child have time to rest? When does the child have time to play outdoors, to relax? So the stress on the child too. So it just allows us to live that slow-paced life and not always on the run, on the move. Another thing I love about homeschooling, no homework. So yes, we have our academic goals. This is what we want to do. We have our targets on a daily basis. I homeschool all year round, including weekends, because I know that we're not in regular school where the child is learning from like 8 to like 2. Even if it's 2 hours in a day, or even if it's 1 hour in a day, and we're able to use that to cover what we want to cover for the day, that's good and fine. So no homework, we just have targets. But if you're in regular school, there's homework. So the child comes back home tired, exhausted. You, the mother, if you're a working mom, you have to now come help supervise the child. And sometimes the homework is so much that you now have to do the homework till late in the evening. When does the child have time to rest? When does the child have time to play? The truth is, children can learn a lot more through play and through interacting with their environment than just restricting them to sitting in front of a screen or in front of a board and just being limited and being rigid. So that's another thing I love about homeschooling, the fact that there's no homework. We do things at our own pace. So another thing is the individualized learning. I learned to understand that my son's learning style is a tactile learner, is a kinesthetic learner, in the sense that he can't stay one place. My son cannot sit down. It's just hard for him. He's so energetic. So we learn through play. We learn based on how he can understand and comprehend. So if we want to learn, for instance, addition, subtraction, you don't have to count with strokes and all those things. Like I said, there are different types of learning. Montessori, hands-on learning. We engage all that. So we learn at his pace and we learn according to his learning style. So that's another thing that homeschooling does. If you are teaching a large class, for instance, even if it's a class of 10, those 10 kids will have different learning style. You cannot use the different learning styles to teach those 10 kids. Rather, you would use one learning style to try to teach those 10 kids. But with homeschooling, you teach based on your child's learning style and how you are not rushing. If the child cannot understand this technique, you try another technique or you leave it, you come back later, you go at the child's pace. And with that, there's an effectiveness in learning. Then also, it gives us opportunity to create memories. In our homeschool, we go for field trips at least once in a month. We maximize our weekends. So we use that opportunity to create memories. We don't just restrict it to learning at home, but we go out, a lot of outdoors. My kids love outdoor, maybe because I love outdoor. So it gives us opportunity to just create memories. Even if we're indoors, it's an opportunity to create memories while learning. We make it fun. So we just create memories in a very less stressful way. And also no fixed holidays. We can learn during Christmas. We can learn during Easter. During holidays, normally I know traditional schools may give homeworks and all that, which the parent has to supervise. And you have to finish before resumption. But with homeschooling, you're just free to learn at any point in time. You can learn during weekends. There's no school interruptions. So it's like a normal way of life. And it also gives an opportunity to cultivate the love for learning in the child. Like I would allow my kids play and all. When it's time for homework, I'm like, oh, it's time, let's do our homework. That's why I call it, because he has been exposed to traditional school, so they call it home fun. So I'm like, oh, it's time for our homework, it's time for our home fun, let's do our home fun. And sometimes in less than an hour, we're done. We do our maths, we do our English, we do our coloring or painting, like that. Then we also engage in screen time, constructive screen time, and also controlled screen time. So basically, these are certain things that I love about homeschooling, and some things other people too who homeschool would also mention that they love. Then how did I transition from regular school to homeschooling? Like I mentioned earlier, during the period of the school interruption and my son took ill, and I now began to consider homeschooling. So basically that period was the period to test the waters. So it's something I now discovered I was enjoying doing it. I was working too at that time, but I was still able to do it. That's teach my son. At the same time, he was enjoying it and all. So I would sometimes drop in with my mom, or if my husband is at home, working from home, he also takes care of the kids and all. So when I come back from work, I teach. I basically rest before I teach, and we're doing just fine. So by the time I had to discuss with my spouse, told him this, what I'm considering. It's really been strong in my heart for us to homeschool the kids. And I know I'd mentioned it to him in passing when we got married, but since it wasn't something I was really keen on, I didn't push it and I didn't see how it would work. But now I kept talking to him about it. He said, give me time, let me pray about it, let me think about it. He was a bit reluctant because there were a lot of unanswered questions and it was an unfamiliar territory, something we had not done before. So I did a lot of research, I read a lot of books ebooks, audiobooks, watched a lot of YouTube videos, like a lot. When I say a lot, I read close to 100 books, both audio and ebooks on homeschooling. I watched more than 50 videos just to understand what I was really getting into. So first, you have to, if you have a spouse, you discuss with your spouse, because you can't homeschool successfully without support. Whether you are a full-time stay-at-home mother or you are a working mother, whatever the case is, you need support. If not, you will experience burnout and you become overwhelmed. Then secondly, you have to do your research so that you can know your why and know your how. Because how people homeschool differs. The way I homeschool will be different from the way someone else homeschools. So you need to know your why, know your how, and that's through research. So also, I had to deschool my son. Deschooling is that period where, for those who are transitioning from regular traditional school to homeschooling, they are used to structure, they are used to schedules. So when they come home, this is a new dynamics. You just give them an opportunity to just play, to just be in control of their schedule. Don't now immediately begin to homeschool. Give them a period to unlearn what they've been used to before you introduce something new. That way, they will not resist it. They will just adjust gradually. So like I said, that period, I was still putting him through a few things, but we're doing more of screen time, not really with the intent to, it's time for learning, it's time for academics. We're doing more of coloring, more of things I know that my son was enjoying naturally to do and didn't feel like it was school. So that period of the schooling is very, very important. Then I had to join a homeschool community. In the process of researching, I discovered there was a homeschool community where I reside. So I joined the homeschool community, and that was where I began to get support from, more insights. That's where I began to join field trips and all that. So joining the community really helped. He made me know that it wasn't just only me, that people are actually doing this thing, even if it's not popular. And in my country, there's no law specifically that says do not homeschool or homeschool and homeschool this way. So the community helped me discover a lot of things and connect with people that were actually doing what I was doing, and also seeing other working mothers, knowing that, it's actually possible to be a working mother and homeschool successfully. Then I also started learning with my child creative ways to teach him based on his learning style. So these were the ways I was able to successfully transition into homeschooling. Then the issue of childcare. There's a co-op, we call it a homeschool co-op. Other parents who are working, they drop their kids there. So it's not a regular school, but it's a co-op for early years. That's children 0 to 5 years. So they get to learn and interact and socialize, pending when you could pick them up. So it's flexible for me. At any time I'm going to work, I drop them there. Whenever I close from work, I pick them up. So that pressure of rushing to meet up with a closing time is not really there, and it's flexible, lesser class size. So at the end, you see what I really wanted, I was able to find with homeschooling and joining the co-op. So it really helps. That was another way I transitioned. And I was talking about support system. My family, that's my parents, are a good support system for me. The kids love going there. So whenever I don't take them to the co-op, they are with my parents or my spouse also. Like I said, you need the support of your spouse. There are times he works from home, so he keeps them engaged while he's working, while I work outside of home. So there's a need for support. You have to be able to find a support system to be able to successfully homeschool, whether you're a working mother or a stay-at-home mom. So what does our homeschool look like? Our homeschool, basically, I have a plan or a goal for a month. I had to pick a curriculum. Let me start from there. And since he had been exposed to regular school, and I don't want him to lose touch of what's being done in the traditional school. We use the national curriculum. For his age, the basics is numeracy, literacy, in clear terms, maths and English. So I use the Nigerian curriculum for maths, for English, and there's creative arts. Any other thing we do is just bits and pieces, but the core learning for academics is maths and English. So based on that curriculum, I create a plan. I have a goal for the month. I break it down into weekly goals and I break it down into daily goals. I have a goal for Monday to Sunday, but it's a goal. It's not rigid that, every day we must do something, but there's a goal. So if the target is at least 4 times in a week, you should be able to do some school work, but it's not limited to 4 times in a week. So my goal covers for the whole week, Monday to Sunday, and it's in bits and pieces. I can even divide one page, for instance, into 2 or into 3 or into 4, depending on the content. The main thing is on a daily basis, you should be able to learn something about maths. You should be able to learn something about English, then be able to learn something generally about his environment and all that. So that's our own standard. And at the end, we're able to cover much. Another thing I noticed in the school he was in was you pay for textbooks, and by the time the session is ending, you look at the textbook, half of the textbook is not even covered. Or okay, let's even give them some credits. They cover only half of the textbook. And the question I ask is, what happens to the remaining half? Then the next session, you're telling them to buy new sets of textbooks or workbooks. So for us in our homeschool, we should be able to cover majority. My target usually is we should be able to cover the whole textbook, but in bits and pieces. So, and that's why I homeschool all year round. So basically working at his own pace, because I know he has a short attention span. So I don't say, sit down for the next 1 hour. We take a lot of breaks in between our homeschool, but we should be able to cover our goal for the week. Even if we can't cover our daily goals, we don't have a fixed duration. I mentioned field trips once in a month and a lot of play dates. I know one of the challenges people talk about with homeschooling is no socialization. I know my mom had a challenge with that. He needs to be in regular school so that he will socialize. He will meet other children. He meets other children at the co-op. And outside that, we have a lot of play days. We recently started a swimming club. So he meets with his friends while swimming. In church, he meets with his friends. So basically, socialization for us is not a challenge because we always have avenues. So next, how do I juggle my work, my school, and also being a wife and a homeschooling mom? My number one tip is support system. My support systems are the co-op, my family, that's my parents, my spouse, and housekeeping, someone that takes care of house chores. So you need to have a support system to be able to juggle all this and successfully homeschool. Then we have goals. I have to plan so that I know that we are meeting our targets. You are not just doing things anyhow, and at the end you're now wondering, what have we achieved? Then I prioritize. I know what is important. I have a scale of preference. Things that are important to me: my work, my family, and my self-care, my friends. So I also know it helps me to be able to know when to say no to certain things. And also another thing that helps me is when I come back from work, I'm exhausted. The natural instinct will be, I need to teach. But I tell myself first, he was in co-op, he has learned. Or the days he didn't go for co-op and he was at home, I make sure his screen time, majority, 80% of the screen time is academic, then the remaining 20 is entertainment. Whether he feels like watching the academic cartoons or not. I tell him, okay, if you don't want to watch it, go and sleep. So I have to tell myself, your child has actually been learning. Even if he hasn't done any writing or workbook, he has actually been learning. So when you come back, give yourself some grace, take some rest. So I usually rest, even if it's for 30 minutes before before doing any schoolwork, or if I need to do anything around the house when I come back, I focus on those things, then catch my breath, rest a bit before I now say, oh, let's do some schoolwork. So basically resting helps me. Then also I try to be as flexible as possible. Flexibility is the word for me. In fact, that's my greatest love for being able to homeschool. It just is flexible, makes my life easy. What works for us today may not work for us tomorrow, depending on the dynamics we find ourselves in. So my ability to switch and say, okay, let's do it this way, since this other way is not working, it's just flexible. Then what are the tips that have helped me as a homeschooling mother? And using this, I want to use this to advise those who may be aspiring to homeschool. The first thing I would say is knowing my why, knowing why I decided to homeschool. My reason for wanting to homeschool was it gives me the flexibility to be part and parcel of my child's learning experience. And we also use the opportunity to build memories and to just live that slow-paced life. So while hitting our goals, but not under undue pressure that can be avoided. So you need to know your why. Then secondly, understanding your child's learning style. I never really understood my child's learning style. When he was in regular school and he comes home, he wants to do homework. As I'm teaching him, there's a cane in my hand because he doesn't want to write. He's not interested. And I'm forcing him the only way I know how to. So at the end, the homework ends up with tears. You understand that kind of thing. But by the time I began to homeschool, I understood that he's a hands-on learner. He finds it hard to still sit still. There was even a time my father was so concerned and he was like, are you sure your son doesn't have attention deficit hyperactive disorder? That's ADHD. And I told my father, no. He was even like, let him see a pediatrician. So that's how active my son can be. So having to understand his learning style helped me a lot in our homeschool. Then thirdly, you don't have to be under pressure to replicate school at home. The reason why we go to school is to learn. And learning is not just academic learning. You learn from your environment. That's why you see children go to school, they pick things from their friends. In fact, the greatest and the easiest way for a child to learn is from their peers. Not necessarily what the teacher is teaching. That's why you see now certain modern schools will look for fun ways to impact learning in their kids because they know that that's a very easy way for the child to learn through play. So you don't have to be under pressure to replicate traditional school, follow the school calendar and all that. Just do what works for you and for your family. Fourthly, provide opportunities for your child to develop a love for learning. Understudy your child, know your child's interests, and provide those opportunities for your child to learn. Oh, my son loves field trips. He's an outdoor child. I must have really, really influenced him in that. He's an outdoor child. So when we were going to the zoo, we're learning. I now begin to expose him to things about animal. We read about animals. We watch documentaries or cartoons about the zoo, all those things. There was a time we went to the Space Museum, had to get storybooks on space, had to expose him to cartoons on space so that he could relate with those things. So you have to provide opportunities for your child to develop a love for learning. Let's learning not feel like a chore or a duty, but let it be fun. Also, don't compare your child or your children with others. What works for one, even amongst your children, don't compare them. What works for one may not work for the other. Let the experience in your homeschool be unique to your child or your children. Then lastly, the last tip that has helped me is joining a homeschool community. You can't do life alone, especially if it's something you are new. Like when I joined the homeschool community, I saw people that have been homeschooling up to the point that their children are now in college, that's in university. And I'm like, in this Nigeria, you homeschooled your child from maybe nursery up to the point of the child going to university. And I'm like, I want to be like that. So that's the beauty of a homeschool community. It helps you learn. You learn from people and you'll be able to adapt to what works for you. Then I'll be rounding up this conversation with certain myths about homeschooling. When people hear homeschool, what do they think and what's the reality? First, homeschoolers are socially awkward. The child will be isolated. No. If your child doesn't socialize, it's your responsibility to create avenues for socialization for your child. Another myth is that homeschooling is for only religious families. Not necessarily. Homeschooling is for families of all backgrounds. It doesn't have to do with religion. No. And even the curriculums, it's not just Christian or Muslim curriculums that exist for homeschoolers. There are secular curriculums also that you can use. Like I said, I use a national curriculum. The textbooks that you would see them use in a traditional school in my country is what I use for my child. So that if for any reason I decide to transition him back into traditional school, it's not a challenge for him. Then also another myth is that homeschool students don't receive quality education. They will tell you that you don't have experience in education, so how can you teach your child? The truth is, you don't need a degree in education to actually be a homeschooling mother. All you need is yourself, your child, your interest in learning about your child and learning ways to impact knowledge in your child. That's all. Outside academics, you are a great source of impacting knowledge and discipline in your child. You teach your child how to eat. You teach your child how to dress up. You teach your child how to brush their teeth. You teach your child how to do so many things. So what stops you from being able to teach your child how to learn to count, how to learn to read, how to learn critical thinking skills? It's no different. So you don't need a degree for that. Another thing people say is homeschooling is expensive. The truth is, you homeschool based on your budget. My budget in a month for homeschooling, I don't even think it's up to a quarter of my pay in a month. By the time I take care of co-op, the books you will buy is for the session, the learning materials, that's like stationaries. That's all. Then, okay, if I'm enrolling my child in an extracurricular activity, what you pay is not like it's something you're paying on a monthly basis per se. It's for a specific duration, after which, for me, even sending my child to a traditional school is even more expensive. So homeschooling is dependent on your budget. You are the one that determines how much you want to spend on your homeschool. Then the last myth is that homeschoolers don't have access to extracurricular activities or resources. I'm busting that myth. No. Homeschoolers can participate in as many activities as they want. Based on your child's interest, all you need to do is to source for a place where they can learn. So I would end this conversation by sharing, I've said all the good things and the great things I love about homeschooling, but there's always two sides to a coin. There's always the benefits and there's always the challenges. So what are some of the challenges that may arise when you homeschool? First, lack of socialization. Like I said, if your child doesn't socialize, it's on you. So you can say, oh, because I'm homeschooling my child, it means my child will always be at home. No, you don't have to limit your child to always being at home. You provide avenues for your child to socialize. Secondly, time management. It's easy for you to, because you're juggling a lot of things, you tend to lose track of certain things or appropriating sufficient time to attending to your homeschool. Then academic achievements. There are times that there's a tendency that you would want to compare your child's achievements with that of a child in traditional school. So you as the parent have to determine what you want your child to achieve for a particular session, academic session, and you work towards it. So there's that tendency that if you're not intentional as a caregiver or as a parent, then your child may lag behind when it comes to academic achievements. And also legal regulations. Like I said, in my country, we don't have a homeschooling law, but in certain developed countries, homeschooling laws exist. So you have to stick to the requirements and the standards and the expectations of those laws. Then lastly, burnout. When you don't have the support you need and you are juggling everything alone, it's easy to get overwhelmed and experience burnout. For me, homeschooling solved my burnout challenge because I was able to create a support system that works for me. So you have to be able to identify your support so that you don't burn out. So it's been a long conversation about homeschooling, and with all I've said, I hope I've been able to enlighten you on what homeschooling is about using my own personal homeschooling journey. We've learned about this option of homeschooling and how it provides a personalized education, flexibility, and stronger family bonds. However, with the challenges that come with homeschooling, it's important that you conduct your research and consider all these factors I've mentioned before making a decision about whether you want to homeschool or not. The essence of this episode is to make you know that there are options available for your child's education. And since you have the upper hand in choosing what kind of educational path you want your child to take, with this, you can make an informed decision. You do more research and you decide if this is what will work for you and your family. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Women Lighthouse podcast. We really hope today's episode has given you some great tools, resources, and a boost of confidence to take charge of your journey. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe on our YouTube channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. You can also follow us on our social media handle for even more tips and a wonderful community that's all about supporting your growth. Join us next time for more uplifting stories and encouraging insights. Until we meet again, keep shining bright, stay inspired, and embrace your unique path to a better tomorrow.